Alright, Megilla Daf Zayin. So we've moved on from talking about the days that the Megillah is read, and now we're starting to talk more about the mitzvahs of Purim, the Megillah itself, Matanos Lavyonim, Mishlach Manos, and we're going to end up with some of the Ein Bains, and that will take us through to Daf Ches. So first thing we talk about is the establishment of Purim. The pasuk says Shenis in Megillah, which means that there were two proclamations. We learned from that first Purim was established throughout all of Shushan, and then after they realized that this is really something that all of Klal Yisrael should be celebrating, so then we expanded it, and now it's celebrated worldwide. That leads us to a discussion that Esther had with the Chachamim, where she said, Kiva'uni Lidoros. She basically told them, my story should be established for all generations. You know, she had to appeal, so to speak, to get the Megillah of Esther put in Tanakh. And there was a little bit of pushback initially. They said, well, it's not right. We don't want to offend the Ummos Ha'olam. It's a bit of an aggressive story. And she says, what do you mean? It's already in their history books. Just put it in the Jewish books now. Which is interesting. You know, sometimes we try to out-guy the goyim, so to speak, but you know, it's okay to celebrate if it's a legitimate nace. So then I think they still had a little bit of difficulty accepting the addition of Esther into Tanakh until they saw that they found a source in the Torah that says Ukasav Zos B'Sefer Ukasav. So that means that you can talk about beating the Amalekim. I think this was the story of Zechiros Amalek, or the opposite. But because it says it 3 times, that teaches us that we can mention the destroying of Amalek once in the Torah, once in Nevi'im, once in Kesuvim. Kesuvim being Esther. So because there's a source for it in Kesuvim, so that's why they added it. Next, we have a whole discussion about whether the scroll of Megillas Esther can make your hands impure. Can it be Metame Seidayim? So we go back and forth. Well, it's not written in Baruch HaKodesh, or maybe it is. We have a Mishnah on Yadayim that says Rus Shir Shirim Koheles Metame Seidayim. That implies that Esther is not Metame Seidayim. But then we say, no, we hold like Rabbi Yeshua, really. So the Megillah is Metame Seidayim. In other words, I think if you read the Megillah and then I forget the practical implication of why we care if it can make your hands impure. But that kind of segues us nicely into the next conversation of, was Megillas Esther written in Ruach HaKodesh or not? Well, sorry, we go on a side note beforehand and we say Koheles was written by Hashem, but a lot of it has to do with Shlomo. But because it's both Shlomo and Ruach HaKodesh, so it is Metame Seidayim. And we go back to Esther, and there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, I think 7 different people who explain sources that show that Esther could not have been written by one person or a historian, rather it was written by Ruach HaKodesh. Rabbi Eliezer says, Vayomer Haman Belibo. How do we know it was Haman's heart? It must be Ruach HaKodesh. Rabbi Akiva says, Esther Nase Schein B'choroeh. She found favor in everyone's eyes. How do you know what everyone was thinking? Number 3, Rabbi Meir says, Veyivada Davar LeMordechai. Mordechai knew. How do we know Mordechai knew? It was made known to Mordechai, big son of Zerah's plan. How do we know that? Rabbi Yossi ben Drukman. Uvabiza lo shalchos yadam. Really? We know that nobody touched the bounty after defeating the Persians? Shmuel says, Kimu v'kibla Yehudim, Kimu lamala, masha kiblu lamata. There's no way that we really know what's happening after Shemayim. It must be Ruach HaKodesh. Rabbi Yosef v'imei por me'ele lo yavru b'soch mitoch Yehudim. So for all future generations, we will always celebrate Purim. Rabbi Nachman says, Zechram lo Yosef mizaram, and we will never forget the memory of Purim. So 7 different explanations as to how we know that Esther was written Ruach HaKodesh. Rava says that you could probably disprove all of them logically. For example, like Yomer Haman Beliba. Okay, we didn't know it was in his heart, but you could see based on what he did. You didn't need Ruach HaKodesh for that. But Rava says that Shmuel's idea, Kimu B'Kilu HaYehudim, is the real legitimate one, even though he was the Amora and they were all Tanoim. That leads to the saying that one spicy pepper is more valuable than a basket full of melons. Beautiful idea. Speaking of really good foods, now we move on to Matanas Levyonim and Shalach Manos. So first we say, because of the word Matanot Levyonim, it means you have to give multiple monies, like more than one, to a poor person. And we say Shalach Manos Ishtarei Manos means 2. You have to give 2 cooked foods to 2 people. We have some stories. Rabbi Yehuda sent Rav Oshia a thigh and a bottle of wine. That teaches us that the 2 different kinds of foods can also apply to beverages. There are legends spoken about Mari's house, where they say that you could walk in there completely full, but man, once you see the different dishes, you gotta just try all of them. And so we have some pretty interesting teachings there, like the fact that there's always room for dessert, as my wife always says. Always room for dessert, for something sweet. I think there's a footnote in the Art Scroll that says that it's not to be taken literal. This is really talking about like learning Torah. The other idea was like a hungry man does not know what it means to be full, meaning to keep eating. He's not a good person he's never been full, so he doesn't really know what it means to be full. So different ideas can be compared to learning Torah. But then we move on to the legendary Gemaras of Ad Lo Yada, Chayv Inish Besume Ad Lo Yada Ben Or Haman the Baruch Mordechai. That's Rabba's famous din. Story where Rabba and Rabbi Zera had their suda together, and then Rabba got up and killed Rabbi Zera, and then was somehow able to magically revive him. And then next year he invited him again, to which he said, "Sorry, miracles don't happen twice. Find someone else to kill." And then Rabba says another din that we learn that the mitzvah of Suda is really only during the day, not at night. And the Gemara talks about that a little bit. Then we segue into the Ein Bains, because we said in our previous Mishnah there's no difference between so embarrassing, but I don't remember. But we start talking about the Ein Bains, so now we're saying there's no difference between Shabbos and Yontif, except for Ochel Nefesh B'Mad. We have a Mishnah that we hold like the Tanakama in another Brisa, where we say it's just Ochel Nefesh, not Machshirei. Like even on Yontif, you can't violate for Machshirei Ochel Nefesh. And we move on to the next Ein Bain, Shabbos and Yom Kippur. There's no difference between the 2 of them except for the punishment. Shabbos you get skila, and Yom Kippur you get kares. And that concludes Daf Zayin.